They called it the Last Accord. 1,000 years of war had torn the galaxy apart, and the Galactic Pact promised something unthinkable: unity. Representatives from every known species, including the unpredictable and often underestimated humans, signed it on the floating citadel of Lorthan's Reach. Peace, real peace, finally seemed possible. Then came the laughter. It wasn't loud, but it echoed through the chamber like a crack splitting the hull of a ship. Every diplomat turned. The source was unmistakable: Ambassador Jarek Halden, humanity's envoy, the youngest and least ceremonious of the bunch. His amusement didn't fade as eyes narrowed and brows furrowed across hundreds of alien faces. "Apologies," Jarek said, not looking particularly sorry. "I just realized something funny. You all signed a peace pact with species who still refer to us as primitive war apes in your diplomatic communiques." A soft gasp ran through the assembly. The Carthale, eight-limbed and notoriously condescending, twitched visibly. "Primitive or not," snapped the Carthale representative, "you sit at this table because of mercy and compromise. We could have eradicated your species centuries ago." Jarek didn't flinch. "And yet here we are. Because you tried. And failed." Silence. He tapped a finger against the table. "Humanity isn't here to be tolerated. We're here because when your wars bled across our solar system, we didn't ask for a seat, we took one." The Galari matriarch blinked both sets of eyes and murmured something to her aides. Others whispered behind translation shields. Earth's delegation was small, 3 diplomats and 1 silent security officer, but none seemed even slightly rattled. The peace accord ceremony continued, but a shift had occurred. What was supposed to be a moment of unity now trembled under the surface with ancient distrust and fraying civility. Hours later, in the private Earth delegation chamber, Jarek sat back with a sigh. The holographic star's cape on the wall pulsed faintly as if mocking him. "That was unnecessary," said Commander Marin Voss, the towering security officer whose presence barely fit in her formal uniform. "It was absolutely necessary," Jarek countered. "They needed to be reminded. We weren't invited here out of kindness, we forced our way into this alliance with results. Every single world that tried to pacify us got pushed back. They've forgotten. I'm making sure they remember before things go wrong." Marin grunted. "They'll call it arrogance. They already do." A pause. Then Jarek leaned forward, tones softening. "Marin, do you trust this pact?" "No." He smiled grimly. "Exactly." What neither of them knew, not then, was that the first betrayal had already begun. On the moon of SCI-FI, 6 light-years from the treaty signing, human relief ships descended on a burned colony, one that had been promised protection under the new accord. They found no defenders, no galactic aid. Only the ash of what had been homes, farms, families. The attackers were not pirates. They were the Vran Imperium, a signatory of the Pact. Their justification? The humans on Beskari had violated a subclause on xenocultural preservation, a bureaucratic excuse to erase a thriving human community that had resisted Vran economic oversight. By the time the footage reached the Earth Assembly, thousands of civilians were dead. "They thought we wouldn't react," whispered Counselor Ava Remney, watching the transmission loop. "They thought the Pact would hold our hands down." Jarek stood beside her, jaw clenched. "They're testing how far they can go." Commander Voss didn't wait for orders. She was already mobilizing. The news hit Earth like a seismic shock. The Pact members issued carefully crafted statements of concern and investigation, but no action. No sanctions. No military presence. Nothing but words. And then the galaxy learned what Earth did when words failed. The first strike was surgical. An orbital strike team, all human, infiltrated Vran space and extracted the Imperium's general responsible for the Beskari operation. He was put on a public trial in Earth's lunar tribunal, streamed live to billions. The Vran called it kidnapping. Earth called it justice. Galactic diplomats scrambled. The Carthale denounced the act. The Galari threatened sanctions. Even the historically neutral Sindari warned that Earth's vigilantism, was destabilizing the very treaty they had just signed. Jarek responded with a single sentence during a press briefing. Peace is not the absence of war, it's the presence of accountability. But it wasn't just politics now. For every alien government crying foul, there were people, civilians, common folk across dozens of worlds, watching Earth's refusal to back down. For every species that scoffed at humans, 1,000 more whispered, "They do not fear the Council." That terrified the Council more than any weapon. 1 week later, Earth's embassy on Harkoon Prime was bombed. No warning. No survivors. No claims of responsibility. Only silence from the Galactic Council. A silence that grew deafening. In the ruins of the embassy, local scavengers found a data core, damaged but partially readable. It contained encrypted messages between a high-ranking counselor and the Vran, discussing necessary escalations to rein in Earth's defiance. The messages went public. The Pact, the galaxy's last hope for unity, cracked. Jarek Halden sat in the war chamber below Earth Assembly Hall. For the first time in a decade, the emergency seal was active, an ancient protocol from when Earth had faced annihilation during the Martian uprising. "We waited," he said. "We signed the accords. We played diplomat. And they burned our people alive." Across from him, holograms of military leaders and world representatives nodded. "They thought they could erase us politically," said Commander Voss, now dressed in full combat armor. "They forgot we write history in fire." There was a moment of silence. Then Earth's chairwoman, Elena Graves, stood. She was old, nearing 90, but her voice cut through the room like steel. "The Pact has fallen," she said. "Not because of us, but because it was built on hypocrisy. Let the stars know, when you betray Earth, you don't get a second chance." And just like that, Operation Thunderwake was greenlit. The First Fleet moved fast, too fast for most Pact species to believe. Earth's warships, sleek and unlike anything the older races expected, came out of slip space near the Vran homeworld in perfect formation. The Vran responded with overconfidence. They sent their standard blockade fleet, outdated ships using tactics they'd honed over centuries of slow war. They expected a frontal assault. They got nothing of the sort. Instead, Earth's fleet launched hundreds of decoy drones laced with AI-mimicked attack patterns. While the Vran scrambled, Earth's ghost ships, cloaked and silent, slipped behind their lines and disabled their supply routes, jamming communications and sabotaging internal defense grids. By the time the Vran flagship realized what was happening, it was alone, powerless, surrounded, and without command infrastructure. Jarek Halden sent one transmission to the Vran High Command. "Your general was tried. Your crimes were proven. Your time is over." The fleet didn't destroy the planet. It didn't need to. They dismantled the regime by erasing its ability to lie. In one coordinated stroke, Earth had rewritten the balance of power. And across the galaxy, the other species watched and decided. Some whispered of war. Some warned of rebellion. But more than a few began contacting Earth directly. Because while fear could control populations, respect could command alliances. And Earth had just shown the difference. The fallout from Vran space echoed like thunder across the galaxy. On planetary platforms, news broadcasts blurred, translating the Human Tribunal live stream into dozens of alien tongues. "Kidnapping!" they cried. "Extrajudicial!" Parliament halls erupted. But across the networks, calmer voices emerged, refugees, veterans, and survivors, who whispered, "At last, someone held them accountable." Ambassador Jarek Halden paced the human delegation's private starship orbiting Phenom 4. Every planet pulsed on holomaps with shifting alliances. Some worlds opened their gates to Earth's envies. Any alliance to the Pact cooled. The old order was splintering. He brushed a hand over the small, battered pendant on his chest, his mother's, forged in scales after she survived the sector wars. Used to remind him, power comes from protection. Justice from action. He turned to Commander Marin Voss, riding shotgun on this mission. "They thought we'd stage a symbolic strike," Jarek said quietly. Kidnap a general. Then wait for our hopes to die in diplomacy. Marin shook her head. No. We made them bleed politically. And now they're bleeding strategically. Their vessel docked at Earth's hidden fleet staging base beneath the ice of Europa. Deep inside, Earth's military command pulsed with energy, the Fury protocol building to a crescendo. Ships passed overhead in vast orbital bays, stealth frigates, nanite drones, ghost carriers, weapons the Council thought were fictional. Within hours, unknown signals poured through Europa's encrypted channels. Some worlds wanted assurances. Others offered sensitive data in exchange for Earth's cloak of neutrality. And dozens of smaller species sent envoys seeking protection. This was the catalyst Earth needed, the moment the galaxy realized humans didn't just break treaties. They shattered old hierarchies. No one believed in the Pact anymore, because humanity had shown the risk of false peace. But complications arrived swiftly. Earth's intelligence channels flagged a coordinated sabotage campaign across 3 mining moons held by neutral factions. Massive explosions, civilian casualties, fingerprints pointed directly toward a covert faction within the Council, acolytes of the Vran and secret syndicates banking on war. They wanted to reignite conflict between humans and neutrals. Jarek and Marin sat before the Joint Intelligence Council, representatives from Earth, Arcturus, and Virelli swarm. They watched lines of code crawl across the screen. They're framing us, Marin said. Planting evidence. Hijacking neutral systems. Trying to provoke us into another war. My first thought is strike back, Jarek admitted. But they want us to react. They want to paint us as aggressors. Counselor L.H. Wyan of the Arcturus Coalition tuned in, antennae quivering. Then what do we do? Jarek laid out his plan, Operation Silver Tongue, a 2-pronged diplomatic offensive. First, deploy covert teams to neutral moons to expose the saboteurs live. Second, send joint investigation envoys, Earth locksteps with neutrals, to restore trust. Meanwhile, Earth would maintain military readiness, but no one would see it. The room murmured uncertain, and that was the point. On the molten moon of Kethra, in a labyrinth of lavalit mining tunnels, covert operative Janice Duval crouched with a translator drone, waiting to download sabotage logs. Her heart pounded in the stifling heat. Rumored Praxian agents, Council hardliners, were still inside. One wrong move could set off another explosion. Back on Europa, Jarek's secure feed showed the mining station admin, Polteric, shaking visibly as he transmitted live. We found these files hidden near the reactor core, he said, voice trembling. The feed switched to black, ops engineers and Praxian markings. They were trying to ignite the fuel reserves. Behind Pol, his broken terminal displayed Council communication headers. 2 hours later, a crater-white public feed carried the footage across a neutral communications network. Alarms sounded on the Pact side. Voices cried betrayal. But no one dared deflect blame onto Earth. Meanwhile, human diplomats, led by Counselor Ava Remney, activated a tri-species envoy delegation, Earth, Arcturus, Virelli. They met on neutral moon Solace 7, battered by civilian anger. Representatives fanned out, each live stream to their homeworld, showing solidarity, transparency, solidarity in action. Within 24 hours, compromised moons were secured. Saboteurs arrested. Evidence indisputable. And the narrative shifted. Earth was not aggressor, it was protector. But the Pact's hardliners wouldn't surrender yet. Satellite arrays in the Pact hard worlds suddenly went dark. Mass communications blackouts, followed by flurries of military deployment. Their response, a fleet of heavily armed interceptors, jumped toward Europa's endbase. Earth's generals waited. From Europa's command grid, Admiral Satomi saw coordinated strat defense. The counterstrike was unusual, not offensive, but symbolic. A single frigate, SS Invictus, would decloak near the Pact fleet, carry Earth's envoy directly under enemy guns, and broadcast a message. Jarek volunteered. Aboard the Invictus, he looked at Marin. If they kill me, they kill the treaty. Marin loaded his final kit, harmonizing negotiator suit, Calm's transponder, and his mother's pendant. "You know they might shoot," she said. He nodded. "They'll have to justify it to the galaxy. And they can't." The Invictus uncloaked 20,000 kilometers off the Pact fleet, hung there like a challenge dart in space. Lights blinked. Then, across every Pact network, Jarek's calm face appeared. "People of the Pact," he said. "You've suffered sabotage. We helped. You've abandoned Earth. We forgive, not for weakness, but for survival." He paused. "Now you must choose, escalate or embrace the truth." Moments passed like starlight. Then, massive energy arcs shot past. Tactical beams targeted the Invictus. The ship rocked. Crew braced. Jarek held steady. But none hit. The Pact fleet held. Beam locks failed. The envoy broadcast expanded. Diplomats from neutral species joined midstream, nodding, broadcasting solidarity. Slowly, weapons retreated. Jarek whispered, "They heard us." Back in command, the galaxy shifted. The Pact's fleets pulled back. A global broadcast, across species, called for new investigations and a reset. Earth had protected neutrals, taken hostages of silence to negotiate peace. Humanity watched as smaller powers proposed a reformed alliance, this time with multiple veto layers, transparency superstructure, rotating command, and Earth's oversight role. Jarek deactivated the broadcast. He looked at Marin. "They want peace again." She cracked half a smile. "We earned it." Jarek touched his mother's pendant. "We built it." They said the war had tipped. Not turned. Not paused. Tipped, like a precariously balanced blade finally choosing a side. By the time Earth fleet strike groups emerged from the dark folds of slip space over the shattered Eltari sectors, the war wasn't about resources, diplomacy, or territory anymore. It had become something far more personal, for both sides. Commander Alara Voss stood at the bridge of the HSS Vindicator, her hands clenched behind her back, her expression unreadable as the orbital scans streamed into her neural HUD. Entire continents had been scorched. Civilian evacuation beacons were buried under craters. The Eltari had been one of the few species who held the line with humans against the Council's secret war, and now their homeworld was ash and silence. Silence was not something humanity ever took well. "Any Council signatures still active?" Alara asked, her voice low. "None. The bastards did their work and vanished," said First Officer Khan, jaw tight. "We're too late." Alara nodded once. "Then we do what humans always do when diplomacy fails." Khan raised an eyebrow. "We talk? We bury the dead, then teach the living why we stop talking." And with that, Earth Fleet's fury finally ignited. Far beyond the ruins of Elter, the Galactic Council was unraveling under its own deceit. Ambassador Threx of the Koran was shouting over 3 different translators in the Grand Assembly Hall, his gills flaring with every breath. "We agreed, that Earth was to be isolated, not provoked. Now you've executed their allies, annihilated neutral systems, and you're surprised they retaliate with orbital railguns?" Councillor Vey, one of the High Drax nobles, sneered from behind his armored mask. "We did what was necessary to maintain galactic order," Ambassador Threx hissed. "You lit a match in a forest and blamed the trees when it burned." And as if to emphasize his point, an emergency broadcast interrupted the chamber's quarrels. Every delegate turned toward the central holofeed. It was a message. Human-made. No encryption. No demands. Just a live feed from the Vindicator's bridge, where Commander Alara stood at the forefront of a growing fleet formation, her voice calm and steady. "This is Commander Voss of the Human Strategic Defense Armada. The Pact is void. The Eltari Confederacy is no more. We are no longer responding to aggression. We are ending it." She stepped aside, revealing the first images of Earth Fleet's retaliation unit. Massive ships blacked out most of the stars behind them. Platforms previously classified as experimental were online. Planet-killers, designs no one believed Earth would ever deploy, were forming up. Then the feed ended. No dramatics. No boasting. Just the calm certainty of wrath. The Council's high command scrambled to respond, but humans had learned from their mistakes. Instead of launching a frontal assault, Earth Fleet deployed a swarm of autonomous carriers across Council trade routes. Thousands of stealth drones emerged, hacking relay stations, sabotaging defense grids, and uploading viral payloads into planetary economies. The Council's forces flailed. Fleets diverted. Resources vanished into black market voids. A fortress world's defense net failed not due to weapons, but because its energy provider's AI had been subtly rewritten to prioritize cost efficiency over shields. No one could predict where the next blow would land. Because Earth wasn't fighting with guns alone. They were waging war with imagination. Back aboard the Vindicator, Alara's core strike group rendezvoused near the Zalari system, one of the key Council strongholds. It was considered unbreakable: Titan-class orbital defenses, interlinked planetary cannons, and 3 fleet battle groups. Perfect. Status on Ghost Fleet? Alara asked. Khan grinned. Coming online now. 36 dark hulls. Full ECM. 0 emissions. On her command, the Ghost Fleet, experimental vessels built for perfect electromagnetic silence, deployed in orbit around Zalari's moon. Using old asteroid mining rigs as covers, they embedded themselves just beyond sensor range. Then the payloads dropped. From orbit, the Ghost Fleet launched Whispers, nanofiber infiltrators, each no larger than a grain of sand, but packed with quantum hacking suites. They didn't explode. They didn't burn. They rewrote. Zalari's defenses came online and immediately began attacking each other. Their planetary AIs began arguing in broken code. Transport hubs locked civilians into quarantine zones, mistaking them for enemy operatives. By the time Earth Fleet's main force decloaked, the system had torn its own defenses apart. The actual strike lasted less than 10 minutes. 3 battle groups disintegrated before they could fire. And when the system-wide feed reactivated, once again, it was Alara on every screen. We offered peace. You chose silence. Now we teach with thunder. The Council's retaliation came swiftly. 36 fleets coordinated an assault on the edge of Sol space, hoping to force humanity back into defense. Instead, they ran into a wall of falsified realities. Earth's outer systems, retrofitted with quantum displacement fields, projected entire fake systems filled with phantom signals, ghost fleets, and echo transmissions. The Council wasted 2 weeks attacking nothing. When they finally found real targets, the traps were already laid. Plasma fields ignited around their vessels. Kinetic rods fell from pre-placed orbital drones. On-board AI cores were infiltrated with messages in broken human languages designed to loop infinitely, each one simply reading. Do you hear us now? The Council was losing not because Earth was stronger, but because Earth was smarter, faster, and fighting like a species that had already buried its own demons, and was now coming for theirs. Not all within the Council approved. Some species, terrified by the escalation, sent envoys begging Earth for terms. The Tamarii offered reparations. The Shal tried gifting ancient technology. Even the warlike Dorn pledged neutrality. But Earth's reply was the same. There were no terms. There would be no negotiations. Not until those responsible for the Eltari massacre stood trial before a unified galactic court, one not controlled by the Council. The message was clear. Earth didn't want vengeance. They wanted justice, and they were willing to burn through stars to get it. It was only after Earth Fleet cracked the third Council fortress world that something changed. In the ruins of Varnix Prime, Alara stood alone on a desolate ridge, watching the clouds of war roll across the broken skyline. She removed her helmet, letting the acid-tinged wind sting her skin. Behind her, Khan approached. You know, for a species that wanted peace, we've become damn good at war, he muttered. She didn't answer immediately. Then, we asked for unity. We got manipulation. We asked for alliance. We got betrayal. And now? Alara looked skyward. The stars still burned, indifferent to war. Now we show the galaxy what happens when humanity remembers who we are. Khan chuckled. And who's that? She smiled faintly. The species that makes war, the last language spoken. And behind her, a fleet unlike any other, human, Eltari refugee vessels, rogue traders from the fringes, even reformed council defectors, rallied under a single banner, not conquest, but consequence. They were no longer just Earth fleet. They were something new. And the galaxy was listening. When the smoke cleared over Varnix Prime, and the echoes of rail fire faded into the ash, humanity still stood. Boundaries redrawn, not in conquest but in consequence. The remnants of the Galactic Pact scattered like broken icons, their will to fight replaced by fractured grudges and whispered admissions. Aboard the flagship HSS Vindicator, Commander Alara Voss returned to her bridge. The console lights glowed dimly, and the viewscreen showed a starfield scarred by orbital debris, but also punctuated by small, hopeful signs. A surviving Eltari refugee convoy drifting toward human-held space. A Drelkin medical frigate offering aid. Even a handful of council defectors answering the distress call. She inhaled, steadying herself. "Bridge," she said. "Send a high-priority broadcast to every fleet, every station, every survivor." "Yes, Commander." The line went silent, waiting. She pressed her palm to the console. "Let them hear us, if only once more." Then, in voices carried across the stars. "This is Commander Alara Voss of Earth's Vindicator Fleet. The Pact was a promise we believed in, but found built on lies. We struck back. We made them bleed, not for bloodshed, but for accountability. The Eltari are no longer alone. Refugees have homes. Refugees have hope. But more than that, the galaxy now remembers what happens when you gamble away peace. We don't seek vengeance. We seek transformation. Tomorrow, we will convene on neutral ground, Eltar's former capital, where representatives from Earth, refugee coalitions, and reformed Pact systems will begin drafting a new covenant, a foundation built not on treaties dictated in grand halls, but on the integrity of action, the transparency of purpose, and the courage to hold the powerful to account. Let it be known, when humanity strikes with fury, it is to drive home the shape of justice. And when the starfire settles, we will rebuild, not raise. The bridge erupted in subdued celebration. Officers tapped consoles, coordinates plotted. Drones activated convo protocols. But Alara's eyes softened. This moment, this forging of something stronger than revenge, was what she'd fought for. In the aftermath, the great convocation of Eltar was held in the rebuilt Senate Hall, perched on a restored mountain plateau. Its marble columns, cracked and weathered, still bore the scars of war, but banners had been raised, Earth's emblem alongside Eltari crests, refugee flags, and new emblems of unity. Together, they shaped language, law, and oath. Ambassadors from once hostile species approached the dais. Among them, Counselor Threx of the Koran, older, visibly shaken. He offered an apology faithed in broken code, but his gesture was real. General Vryn of the Vran Imperium, no hero's welcome, but a sign that accountability had outweighed pride. Representatives of the Drelkin, Arcturus, and others filled every seat. Human survivors, scientists, refugees, even military medics, sat alongside them. The new covenant was read aloud. We commit not merely to the absence of war, but to the presence of justice. To the defense of the weak, the hearing of truth, and the courage to wield power with humility. May the mistakes of silence never define us again. As each species placed their seal, a low murmur rose, not hopeful, but solemn. Real acknowledgement. After the ceremony, in the quiet plaza outside, Commander Voss found Ambassador Sarah Volkova guiding a group of former refugees through the remnants of Eltar's ruins. Children laughed as they followed Vox drones dispersing seeds and plants, symbols of renewal. Alara joined them, shoulders heavy with relief. Well done, Sarah said quietly. Alara glanced at the children, human, Eltari, hybrid. We struck harder than I ever imagined we'd need to. These children never asked for war, Sarah replied. But they deserve peace. It's rare, and worth every cost. Ilara nodded. We learned a lesson we already knew. Peace isn't passive. It needs protection. But violence alone isn't enough, Sarah added. We protected. We rebuilt. That's how trust grows. Ilara exhaled softly. Let's hope the galaxy remembers more than how we broke the pact. Sarah smiled gently. They'll remember how we built from its ashes. Months later, at Earth's Rebuild Council, Chairwoman Alina Graves gazed at a new star map. It glowed with dozens of fledgling, covenant systems, tiny points of cooperation and unity spiraling outward. They weren't part of any empire. Not council. Not pacts. Something different. Something Earth had helped shape. Beside her, General Marin Voss, promoted, tapped her data pad. Reps from Arcturus just arrived. They want to formalize a Council for Justice alliance. Neutral states are lining up. Alina's eyes shone. Then they'll remember peace as something we earned, not something they gave. Marin nodded. And if needed, we'll keep that blade sharp. Alina laughed, low and rich. But maybe now we carry it openly, with purpose, not threat. Marin tossed her a small figurine, a starbound tree made of intertwined metal and crystal. A new symbol? A new beginning, Alina said. From fury to foundation. In a quiet moment at home on Earth, Jarek Halden reflected on a battered hollow image, himself, at Elter's convocation, offering handshake to General Vryn. They both held tears. But when the world asked him which moment mattered most, he whispered for himself. When the fury ended, and they asked us to stay. He touched the image, then looked up at Earth's night sky. Somewhere beyond, the new covenant systems shone. And humanity had struck with fury once. But now they were standing with purpose.